again recording from the exhibition hall at Trees and Utilities. This is episode of Trees and Lines. We'd like to welcome both of you from Eversource. Appreciate it, Jenna and Jonathan.
Appreciate you guys joining, making some time.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Yeah, would you take a minute and just introduce yourself and a little bit about your company?
Sure. So my name is Jenna Turner, and I'm the manager for vegetation management at Eversource for Connecticut distribution. So I oversee, we do about over 16,000 miles of distribution work in Connecticut, and so that's what I do for Eversource.
Yeah, and I'm Jonathan Rizzo. I originally started with the company. I came from Pico Exelon, switched over to Eversource in the past about 2 years.
Went to the enemy.
I started in the transmission realm. I've been a project manager for transmission across all 3 states. I've migrated to more of a special projects role within the department.
Okay.
So working on a lot of the Treeline USA accreditations, right-of-way stewardship is one of the things we're working on.
Good.
And then on top of that, a lot of the digitization efforts, namely, a new work management software product.
Yep.
Getting that, loaded up, getting all of our manual processes switched over to a digitized environment. So I'm going to be doing a lot of that.
We've gotten a little bit familiar with your footprint. Bob Allen, who we had an opportunity to have on as a guest, and we actually ventured up to see the arboretums, which was very impressive. You guys are doing a lot of pretty amazing things, kind of in your region. I know you guys are speaking at the conference tomorrow, so this is your little tune-up, but maybe you can get a little peek into like what you guys plan to talk about tomorrow without giving away the big splash. So what's the topic that you guys are going to focus on?
Yeah, so we called the title of our talk is Optimizing Vegetation Management, and really we wanted to give a utility perspective on some of the things that we've done in recent history and have found success with. Not just with digitization efforts, but we have some other flavors of, short sprint type projects that we've found success with. Really the premise of the whole talk is, we have a lot of great vendors here. We thought it would be good to give a little bit of representation from the utility side.
Yep.
Share with our cohort, here are some of the things that are working for us and that we've done internal to our organization, not leaning on outside parties. These are maybe, could be a catalyst for your own program, something that you could possibly do, trying to prod someone to be a little more insightful and like looking across their company to leverage any possible opportunities to improve their programs.
Oh, very cool.
A lot of good experiences to share. Do you have any negative experience? We learn as much from mistakes as we do from successes. So are we going to have any of those stories in there?
In this particular talk, we will not have negative experiences.
Keeping it positive.
And I would say that's more of a byproduct of the time window. We found out, it's 40 minutes. You want to leave a little bit of time for questions. So we had a lot that we wanted to talk about.
We had to cut it down.
We had to cut it down. So it's been a lot of fine tuning and rehearsing. Because we do have so much we want to talk about, but it's really hard to try and ramrod all that information towards an audience that's so diverse. It's not just utilities here; it's vendors. It's and we're starting to see just other industries attending these conferences, namely remote sensing and software suites. So
it seems that you guys obviously seem very digitally friendly. Technology advancement, AI, analytics, all of that stuff is such a big path here going forward. In terms of, you mentioned, hey, we've internally decided to do some stuff. Is that a big sort of ask in terms of capital allocation from your leadership? How are you guys typically funding those type of initiatives? Because that ultimately is getting passed down to ratepayers, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. And the decision to start internally, I think is a byproduct of where we were. There were a lot of manual processes that we had, and I think it's really hard for a lot of organizations to go from a strict paper environment to a digital environment. Right. That's a really hard change to make, especially when you think about the field planners who have worked for that company for a number of decades. And you're now, they're used to walking down the right of way with a piece of paper, and now you're handing them a tablet. Yep. You're handing them something. Hey, all the things you used to do, you now have to do them on here. You know, and there has been an attempt before in our organization to switch to a software suite with a vendor. And really, it was those challenges that ended up being the downfall of it.
You guys just decided to do it
and some
in-house.
other items.
Yeah.
So I mean, doing it this way does give you a valuable opportunity to explore what's important to you. As you're analyzing each one of your processes, converting them to that digital environment, making sure all the workflows are captured, you have a really valuable opportunity to reanalyze and see what's important. All the way from, if we're talking about hazard tree inventory, all the way from the inventory of that tree to when it's cut down, QC'd, and paid. What are all the steps in between, and where could we be more efficient because of this digital process?
And to add to that, when we made this transition, we didn't do it all at once. We started with just a couple forms that we were collecting in Excel, and we transitioned them over to a digital form collection on the Esri ArcGIS Online platform. And so it wasn't this overtaking of all of our processes all at once. We did it piecemeal, and then as we saw success and buy-in from our team, the feedback from our arborists in the field, then we added more and more into that digital environment.
So I'm curious about, you mentioned right away, Stuart, is something you're working towards?
That's something on our roadmap. One of the projects I've been looking at. So I came from, as I mentioned, Pico. They have a lot of those established relationships and accreditations. And when I came over to the Eversource, Eversource as a company, they have a very wide, complex footprint, which makes those accreditations a little more tricky. And I've had the valuable opportunity of being able to take my past expertise of being familiar with the program and kind of shepherding the company, through the process of getting those accreditations, which in the end of the day, they are very valuable. They showed your customers a wide variety of things. I mean, if we're talking about Treeline USA, there's many advantages inherent in having that program. So that's where we started, working with the Arbor Day Foundation as well with our Energy Saving Trees program. We just did that pilot program this year, and it was wildly successful. So,
excellent.
I think it's important for utilities to engage in these types of projects.
Absolutely. We know a little bit about your background, Jonathan. Came from Pico. Did you, right out of college, were you right into the vegetation management industry?
I grew up on a tree farm, so I was kind of indoctrinated into the tree.
All right, so you were born in it. All right.
Yes.
It's been part of your kind of background from the beginning.
Sure.
How about you, Jenna?
So I studied natural resources management at the University of Connecticut, and I was interested in forestry, wildlife management, fisheries, and I wasn't really exactly sure where I was going to go. I just know I love being outdoors. And then in Connecticut, we had several major storms in 2011 and 2012 that were extremely impactful. We had long duration customer outages across the state due to tropical storms that came through and a heavy wet snow that came through when we still had oak leaves on the trees. And it made me realize that there was this field of utility vegetation management that I never knew existed.
Yeah.
And so I switched from more of a forestry focus to getting my arborist license. I worked for about 3 years for United Illuminating, which is in Orange, Connecticut. It's a smaller utility that's now part of Avangrid, Iberdrola. Yep. And then I was commuting there, and my hometown arborist position opened up at Eversource. And so I was very happy to make that switch. My commute went from about an hour to 8 minutes.
Okay.
And so I spent
no-brainer.
Several years in the field, overseeing the local contractors for safety, quality, performance, all of that. Working very closely with our tree wardens in Connecticut. It's a big part of our vegetation management program. And then transitioned into a supervisor role for several years, where I supervised the eastern part of Connecticut. And then just last November, transitioned to manager for our distribution program in Connecticut.
No, very interesting. I guess before we leave you here today, what are some of the unique challenges that you guys face in your localized footprint, maybe centered around reliability, centered around customer care? Maybe talk to us a little bit about some of the, headwinds that you guys face that you have to deal with and try and solve for.
Do you want me to go first?
I'll go first for
Okay,
distribution.
Sure. Go ahead.
So we have a complex, challenge, especially I speak about Connecticut for the Eversource territory. We have a densely forested roadside that's been impacted by invasive insects, drought. We have stress trees, and they are everywhere. It's a very dense forest. And so just that sheer population of trees creates challenges for reliability. We also have an involved permissions process in Connecticut. So we don't have a right-of-way that we can just maintain. We have to get documented notification from the abutting property owners, even if a tree is in a town right-of-way and the tree warden signs off on us trimming or removing a hazard tree. We still have to contact the customers and get their signature. And so we do receive limitations and refusals from our customers. So that's definitely a challenge, because unless the trees are touching or showing signs of burning, we can't trim them without consent. And so there are varied conditions along a circuit that's highly dependent upon the support we receive from our customers. So our arborists out in the field, they work very hard to meet with customers and explain the importance of vegetation management for reliability in Connecticut, especially when we have storms coming through. Trees are our number one cause of outages. So definitely something that's a challenge, and we try to work with it on the local level with our customers and tree wardens.
That was very comprehensive. I like that.
You got to cherry pick.
Make
now.
sure you just repeat that whole thing tomorrow. So for I'm going to speak a little bit to the transmission end, but then also for the company as a whole. We transcend 3 states, and those states are, I'd say, from a tree perspective, they're pretty similar, but the customer climate, the sensitivity of customers, also the footprint of the infrastructure, it presents unique stateside related challenges, especially when it comes to environmental permitting. So obviously there are federal regulations on our transmission lines, but we're also privy to state level regulations.
Yep.
And Connecticut, Massachusetts, and New Hampshire have some of the more aggressive environmental restrictions and permitting processes pretty much in the world. They're very, endangered species, sensitive species. They're all over that. So a lot of diverse challenges depending on where you're working. But looking, internally to our company, because of the variance in all 3 states, having a veg management program across those 3 states results in a very siloed organization. Each one, even though an arborist, has his own flow in Connecticut, it's not like in New Hampshire, and the same with Massachusetts. So one of the interesting things that we've discovered in this process of digitization is, we want to also consolidate. We want an arborist who plots a hazard tree in Connecticut to recognize the process in New Hampshire. I think there's a lot of value inherent in that. I think holistically, when you look at data that's being captured across the whole organization, you need all the data that's being captured to be homogeneous in one way. Otherwise you won't be able to interpret it.
Right.
So really, that was one of the biggest challenges as we go through this process of digitization. It's really getting everybody to agree on, what data is important to us as a whole organization,
right,
and what is the baseline level of data that allows arborists to conduct their jobs in each state, but doesn't eliminate function. So,
yeah, that's awesome. Well, we appreciate you guys making time. I know you guys are speaking. You got a busy schedule here, but really enjoyed getting a chance to chat with you. Please say hi to Sean and Bob for us. And,
sure.
We will.
And again, pleasure meeting both of you.
And good luck tomorrow.
You as well.
Yeah,
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Yeah,
Appreciate
I appreciate it.
That's it for this episode of Trees and Lines, brought to you by Iapetus Holdings. If you like the show, please give us a 5-star rating on Apple or Spotify. If you have any questions or comments on any of our episodes or ideas for topics or guests, we'd love to hear from you. Please contact us at treesandlines@iapetusllc.com. We'll chat with you soon.